This is Amud Yomi Gemara in Berachos Daf Memtes Amud Aleph, and we pick it up on Memtes Amud Beis, but we pick it up on Memtes Amud Aleph. Yosef Rav Zera Achayrid Rav Gidol. Rav Zera was sitting behind Rav Gidol. Kamed Rav Yehud Yosef. One more time. Yosef Zera Achayrid Rav Gidol. V'Yosef Rav Gidol Kamed Rav Huna. V'Yosef V'Kahamar. They were sitting and they were saying two lines from the wide lines. Ta. If someone makes a mistake, V'lo Yizkir Shel Shabbos, and he does not mention Shabbos in Berachos Hamazayin, Omer, he should say the following: Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam shenasan Shabbos the menucha la'amo Yisrael. We bless Hashem that He gives Shabbos to Klal Yisrael. B'menucha ba'ahava lo'is ulebris Baruch mekadesh HaShabbos. Amar lei, Rav Huna responds, Man Amrit. Who says this? Rav. So Rav Gidol said this comes from Rav. Hadar Yosef Kamar. They were sitting and saying Tav lo yizkir shel Yom Tiv. One forgot Yom Tiv in benching. Omer, what should he say? Parashat Yom Tovim li'yis Baruch Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam shenasan Yom Tovim la'amo Yisrael l'simcha l'zikaron Baruch mekadesh Yisrael v'azmanim. Amar lei, Rav Huna responded, Man Amra. Rav Gidol again said to Rav, Hadar Yosef Kamri. Now for a third time, Tav lo yizkir shel Rosh Chodesh. Omer, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam shenasan Rosh Chodesh la'amo Yisrael l'zikaron. So in all three of these cases, says the Gemara, Rav Zera says, I do not know, Yamar b'simcha, Yila Amar b'simcha. When by Rosh Chodesh you say simcha not, yichatem ba, whether you finish the bracha, yichatem ba, oy didei, oy dirabe, or it's from himself or not. And of course we know that Lamaisa, we do not say such. We don't say full bracha if one forgot. Rather, we do have a harachaman potentially that one could insert in, etc. Or one would have to, or potentially repeat benching, etc. Continues the Gemara on the bottom of Memtes Amud Aleph. Gidol bar Minumi havikoi kamid Rav Nachman. Gidol bar Minumi was standing in front of Rav Nachman. Ta Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman forgot to add in one of the additional parts of benching. V'hadar l'reishi. So he went back to the beginning of benching, and he repeated the entire benching. Amar lei, Rav Gidol bar Min Yumi said to him on the top of Memtes Amud Aleph, Mai tayim ba'avin marachi. Amar lei, Rav Nachman responded, Amar Rav Shila Amar Rav Talcha Zeroish. Like we just mentioned, there's a special bracha you could say. So why are you going all the way back? Do we not learn the only time you can do that is if you didn't begin the fourth bracha of Ateva Meitev. Chayzer le Roish. Continues the Gemara. Amar Rav Idi bar Avin. 8 lines down. The first one line is Rav. Says Rav Idi bar Avin, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel. Tav le'izkir Rosh Chodesh b'tefila. What happens if one forgot Rosh Chodesh in Shemona Esrei? Meaning, till now we are talking about Berachos Hamazayin. Now the Gemara segues into discussing what about a similar halacha if one forgot with regard to Shemona Esrei, Rosh Chodesh Yalvi Avai. Tav le'izkir Rosh Chodesh b'tefila machzirin oisai. He has to go back. Berachos Hamazayin in machzirin oisai. Amar Rav Idi bar Avin Rav Amra Ma'isha tefila Ma'isha Berachos Hamazayin. By tefila, you said you have to go back. But Berachos Hamazayin you do not. What's the difference? Amar lei. So Rav Amram responded, Afli didei kashili. I had the same question. Ushelti Rav Nachman, and I asked Rav Nachman this question. V'amar li, and Rav Nachman said to me, Minei to Mar Shmuel Shmili. I didn't hear any reason from Mar Shmuel as to why by Shemona Esrei you go back and not by Berachos Hamazayin. Alanechza not. But let's try to figure it out on our own. Tefila de chayvi. Tefila is a chiyuv. So if you forget, you go back. Machzir say. Berachos mezayna, but Berachos Hamazayin diachal bai ti bai achli bai laachal. One does not have to eat. Therefore, ein machzirin oisai. A fundamental chilek between Shemona Esrei and benching as to whether it comes from a chiyuv or not. Asks the Gemara L'meyatam. Shabbos says Yamim Tovim Deloy Sagi Deloy Achil. On Shabbos and Yontif, when it is not enough to not eat, meaning on Shabbos and Yontif you have a chiyuv suda, hachanami ditay hader. So based on the rule you just said, that if it comes from a chiyuv, you have to go back. So at Shabbos and Yontif, seemingly it comes from a chiyuv, you should have to go back. Amar le in, that is true. Amar Shila Amar Rav ta'a chayzer leroish. And of course, that is the way to remember when one has to repeat benching Shemona Esrei is if it's a chiyuv. Friday night Suda, Shabbos day Suda is a chiyuv, and therefore one would repeat benching. Shemona Esrei is a chiyuv, and therefore one would repeat Shemona Esrei. Ask the Gemara of Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav Ta'amir Baruch Shenasan. Answers the Gemara, Lavit Mer Allah, Lo Yisrael Shal Pasuk Vatev Meitev, then indeed Chayzer Le Roish. We're up to the two dots, about 8 lines before the wide lines, in which the Gemara continues. And just to point out, the reason why I don't say Shalosh Shudis is because Shalosh Shudis is more of a machlekes as to the level of chiyuv, and therefore we have to eat Shalosh Shudis. Only question is, because you could be yotzer with other foods, etc., that would be part of the reason why one would not potentially repeat Berachos Hamazon, but that's more of a discussion. Continues the Gemara, Ad Kama Mizamnin. 8 lines at the 2 dots. What is the minimum amount one has to eat to join in a zimun? So in the Mishnah, Tanakama said a kezayis, and Rav Yehuda said a kibeya. Says Gemara, Lemeimra Rameir Chashav le kezayis. It sounds like Rameir is the one that says like kezayis is significant, whereas now I just said it's Tanakama. I didn't say Rameir. So it says the obviously Stam Tana we're assuming is Rameir. Rav Yehuda Kebeya asked the Gemara. We learned the opposite. Tonight we learned in the Mishnah. Someone who leaves Yerushalayim in his basar kodesh, and he remembers he has kachim in his hand. If you pass the place called Seifim, what does he have to do? Sarfim b'makayim, burn it right there. Let's go back to Yerushalayim. And he burns it before the Beis Hamikdash with the wood of the Mizbeach. Ad kama heim chayzrim. How much chametz do they have to go back? Rameir Omer Zeb Kebeya. Both of them are Abeya. Rav Yehuda says Zeb Kezayis. So what do we see? We see Rav Yehuda and Rameir have opposite shitas. We're assuming that Tanakam is Rameir, which is in Kezayis, but in this Mishnah, Rameir is one that says Kebeya. Amar Rav Yochanan, you're right. Mochlefes Ashita. Teretz number 1. Abaye Amar. Teretz number 2 explains Abaya. Really, you're right. You don't have to switch around the shitas. On the second wide line, by us, says the entire of Achalta Zavata Birachta. That's the machlekes Rameir and Rav Yehuda. It's not a stam machlekes about Kezayis and Kebeya. Rameir savar what v'achalta zu achila. V'savata zu shtia is drinking. V'achila b'kezayis. Whenever the Torah says achila, that refers to a kezayis' worth. That's why in the Mishnah by us, the Tanakama Rameir says a kezayis. Rav Yehuda savar says Rav Yehuda no. V'achalta v'savata achila sheyesh basviya. Says Rav Yehuda, the Torah put achalta and v'savata together, hones in. You need to have a svia association in your eating. And how much is that? Not a regular achila of a kezayis, says Rav Yehuda. Vezazu kebeya. And whereas in the Mishnah Psachim, asa b'svara pligi, over there, in which the shitas are seemingly switched, the Rameir says Kebeya and Rav Yehuda says Kezayis is Bisvara. Rameir Savar with regard to going back, if you took Toma out of Yerushalayim, Chazarasa b'Tomasai, to go back for the food to destroy it. Ma Tomasai, the din is a Kebeya of Chazarasa b'Kebeya. Rav Yehuda Savar no, Chazarasa ki Isur, my Isur is how much the Isur amount that you're chayiv if you take out is b'Kezayis, av Chazarasai b'Kezayis. We continue with the Mishnah. 7 lines into the wide lines on Mem Tesam at Aleph. Says the Mishnah, Ketzad Mizamnin. Okay, practically, how do we make a zimun? Says the Mishnah, Bishloisha. 3 people. Amar Nevarich. The one who's leading the zimun says, Nevarich Shechanu Mishalai. Let us Nevarich, let us say a bracha to Hashem. Bishloisha Bahu. If there's 3 people aside for the mizamin, sorry for the one leading, Omer Baruch Hu. Basara Omer Nevarich Elokeinu. Basara v'hu 10 plus he. Omer Baruch Hu. Echad Asara v'echad Asara riboy. Whether a 10 myriad, 10,000. Same halacha. B'meya. When there are 100 people. Hu Omer Nevarich Hashem Elokeinu. B'meya v'hu Omer Baruch Hu. Be'elef hu Omer Nevarich Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Yisrael. Be'elef v'hu Omer Baruch Hu. We keep on seeing that whenever there is an equal number, there are specific adjectives in the Torah that describe 100, 1,000. But when there's one more than that, then it's merely Baruch Hu, blessed, because he is telling them to say such a bracha. Beriboy, when there's 10,000, the myriad, Aimer, Nevarach Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Yisrael Elokei Savakas Yishav HaKeruvim Alamazin Shachalnu Beriboy V'hu Aimer Baruch Hu. Kenin Shumavarech, the same way the leader says the bracha Kach Ein Achra, so to the answer Baruch Hashem Elokeinu Elokei Yisrael Elokei Savakas Yishav HaKeruvim Alamazin Shachalnu. Rabbi Yosef Gili Aimer Lefi Reva Kalmei Varchim. The bracha goes according to the size of the people that are there. Shenemar bim hakelois baruch hu elikim shemim kar Yisrael. Bim hakelois, in the assembly Hashem blesses from the makar, from the source of Klal Yisrael. Amar Rav Akiva, ma matzinu bebeis haKnesses. What do we find in shul? Echan merubim v'echan mu'atim bar oimer baruch hu es Hashem. So too by Zimon, says Rav Akiva, there should be no difference. That's what you add on in a shul. Let's just begin the Gemara. Amar Shmuel teaches Shmuel, never exclude yourself from the group. Nivarech, let us bless. You never say you bless, you're part of it. Ay, Tanan, but obvious kasha, the Mishnah kept saying Shleisha v'hu, Meya v'hu, Elef v'hu, Aimer Baruch Hu, which we explains means he's talking to them and he's not included. Ema explains the Gemara as we move over to the top of Nunam and Aleph, Af Baruch Hu. You add that on. B'kamakam nevarech adif, meaning when there's more, you could say Baruch Hu, but saying nevarech is better. And we conclude with the Raya, Damar Rav Barava, Amri Bei Rav, the Yeshiva Rav, they said, Tanina. We learned in the Mishnah, Shishin Echlakim Alasar, if there's 6, they can split into 2 groups till there's 10. Iyam B'Sham nevarech adif, Shamachin Echlakim, it makes sense that you split up. Doesn't make any difference. However, Aliyamr Baruch Hu adif, Amaynech Lakim. How can you split up? If you have 2 groups of 3, you're not going to say Baruch Hu. Allah Shmamina, Nevarich Adif, to say Nevarich is better. Baruch Hu is just you're allowed to say if there's an additional person. Shmamina, and that's the Raya. We'll pick it from here in the next year. B'siyata Dishmaya.